Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for listening to the testimony from both sides. You've heard a lot of information today, and I thank you for your time. With all the information you have been given, we have to separate the factual evidence from pure speculation. To find my client guilty, there must be beyond a reasonable doubt of evidence against him that he knew of the material defects. And we know there is none. What we do have is evidence that is supported by facts. The plaintiffs are claiming my client didn't inform them of noisy neighbors. My client never had a problem with the neighbors, and therefore their claim is filled with ambiguities. My client never heard the so-called rowdy neighbors, and therefore had no way of telling the plaintiffs of this accusation. My client sold his home way under fair market value. He's an 89-year-old man that lost his wife. This home was the couple's dream home. He was ready to move on to a retirement facility and look toward his final destination. My client testified he had no knowledge of the contaminated soil, and it was not readily discoverable, seeing his wife and himself enjoyed planting flowers in the backyard and never had an issue. But let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. How do we know the soil wasn't contaminated by the Powells after the Powells moved in? Are the Powells just trying to receive damages or remedies in their favor in which they do not deserve? I would agree. The Powells had every opportunity to hire an inspector to go over every inch of the property inside and out. They chose not to. My client also allowed the Powells to come over and do a walkthrough before purchasing the property. A non-disclosure was never signed, and the Powells never presented one. In addition, they spent 15 minutes in total in a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom home located on almost 3 acres of land, and didn't even step foot in the backyard. Let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. If you were spending over $700,000 on a home, wouldn't you spend more than 15 minutes on a final walkthrough? Even more so when you chose not to pay for an inspector to come out and inspect the property? At this point, the Powells should take responsibility for their lack of judgment and not blame my client for not knowing of the contaminated soil. And finally, the Powells decided to try and blackmail my client by sending a threatening letter. Not only did my client tell them yet again he had no knowledge of the defective soil, but he would not be giving them the chandelier either. At this point, it looks as if the Powells are trying to take advantage of an 89-year-old man. Not only did they offer way below fair market value, but now they want a chandelier as well, as if the contract for sale wasn't in their best interest to begin with? Does this even sound reasonable? No, not at all. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you to look at the facts of the case, period. My client had no knowledge of defective soil. He gave the Powells every opportunity to inspect the home and back out if they were not satisfied. He had no issue with the neighbors. Finally, they blackmailed my client and threatened a lawsuit if he didn't oblige to their demands. The only fact the plaintiffs have provided was their own negligence. The only possible outcome for my client, Mr. Knox, is to be found not guilty. Thank you for your time.